Why get all your holiday decorations delivered through Instacart? Because maybe you only bought 2 wreaths but have 12 windows. Or maybe your toddler got very eager with the advent calendar. Or maybe the inflatable snowman didn't make it through the snowstorm. Or maybe the twinkle lights aren't twinkling. Whatever the reason, this season, Instacart's here for hosts and their whole holiday haul. Get decorations from the Home Depot, CVS, and more through Instacart and enjoy free delivery on your first 3 orders. Service fees and terms apply.
Nicholas Alahverdian became the focus of a sensational international story earlier this year when authorities in Scotland arrested the man they say was him, a Rhode Islander who is suspected of faking his own death a couple years earlier and who was wanted on a rape charge in Utah. Now, years earlier, Alahverdian befriended politicians at Rhode Island State House when he was a teenage page there, and he later returned to those halls years later to push for reform of the state's child welfare system, DCYF, under whose watch Alahverdian claims he suffered abuse as a child.
I'm joined now by former East Providence State Representative Brian Coogan, who knew Nicholas Alahverdian perhaps as well as just about anybody in our area. Brian, I want to say, first of all, in a nutshell, to start off, how would you describe Nicholas Alahverdian?
I would describe Nick, if he's alive, according to himself, he's dead, but I would describe him as a very dangerous individual. And what I mean by that, a sexual predator and a con artist. And he could ruin your life with a computer if he gets your correct information.
Just take me back to how you first met him.
I met Nick back in 2000 when I was elected to the state representatives. He was a page up at the State House. And, you know, he was just a young kid. He was 14, I believe, at the time. And he was a page running around the House floor.
And what was he like, or what? How did you connect?
Connected with him like we all did. All the reps who got to know Nick. He was special. He stood out more than the other pages on the floor. Very smart. You ask him to do something, he would do it. He would go downstairs or get a bill, or run another bill over to another rep. He'd run around on the floor, and he was pretty much at attention all time.
And did he seem to become friendly, as you said, with a number of state representatives?
Yeah, we all like Nick. Nick, at a young age, I didn't know now what I knew then. He pretty much, in my opinion, knew how to pick his victim, because that's pretty much what he does. And we all liked him. He got along with everybody, got along with him, and just a nice kid to have around.
And then, and what happened from there? At some point, did he? It seemed like he became, more than just a page to people. Kind of like, I don't know if it became friendly with him, or there was something more than just like he's some kid at the State House.
He was more of as an overachiever. He'd go out of his way for you. He would stay there late hours. He'd get there early, stay there late. And I didn't know his background, like a lot of the other reps didn't know his background. So, he was, running away from group homes. We didn't know it then, but we understand it now. So he had a lot of time on his hands. He was in and out of the State House a lot. And so I describe him as an overachiever, and he really wanted to get involved more and more with the reps. They wanted to be around the reps, wanted to be around where the other kids were there. They could care less if they were there or not. It seemed like to me where Nick wanted to be there.
And at some point, did it get to the point where you considered adopting him?
Right. What had happened was he was coming around with these different scrapes, scratches, bruises, hard luck stories where he's being abused, and it started to unfold that he was an abused child, according to him.
And I guess, how did it go from there? Is this something you seriously considered?
Well, what happened was he was looking for someone to adopt him. And I believe there was a handful of reps who was willing to adopt him, but for some reason, he really wanted myself and my wife, Heather, to adopt him. And he, I would go home and tell my wife the hard luck stories that this kid has, and we both considered it. And she said, at the time I didn't have any children. Now I have five boys. So, we were leaning towards adopting him.
And then was there something that either stopped that or made you reconsider?
Well, there was a few things. He had more and more scratches and bruises. Nothing ever in the back and on his back, back of his neck or anything. Everything was in his face and his arm, so something wasn't really right. But I had a soft spot, and he put a lot of pressure on me to adopt him, as well as a couple other reps. I talked to other reps, and we all just sensed there was something more wrong with what was going on in his life, but we couldn't figure it out. And then one day I got a call from him. He was down at the 6th District Court, which is family court. And he asked me to meet him down there, and he was very irate on the phone, and he was very pushy. And I said, sure, Nick, I'll come down there. So I met him down in front of the courthouse, and he said, they're trying to send me away. They're trying to hush me up because I've been abused in these group homes and in and out of foster homes. I said, so Nick, what do you want me to do? He says, can you talk to the chief judge? At the time, it was Jeremiah from the 6th District Court. He says, can you come upstairs with me? Because they're trying to get rid of me. The state's trying to bury me and send me away and so forth and so on. I said, I'll go upstairs and I'll talk to the chief judge. So I did. I went upstairs and I spoke to the chief judge with Nick. Nick stood outside in the foyer right outside the office, and the door was open a little bit. The judge asked me to shut the door, and I did. And the judge said, everything that this young man is telling you, he's actually doing to other kids. And I can't get into specifics, but I kind of read between the lines. Nick said he was sexually assaulted. Supposedly Nick was sexually assaulting other kids. They would, he had a problem, I guess at one time he masturbated in front of another kid or some kids, and abused other kids. And the bruises and scratches that he had, I was told that they were self-inflicted.
What went through your mind at that point, hearing all that?
Well, the judge told me absolutely not. He said, Representative Coogan, if you adopt this kid, it'll be nothing but a case of horrors. He'll be accusing you or your family members. He's not a normal kid. And at that time, his social worker or DCF worker walked in, and we heard them arguing outside the door. And he had said to her, if you try to send me away, I will say that you assaulted me, not sexually assaulted. And she said, Nick, don't you talk to me like that. And then the judge, Jeremiah yelled for Nick to come in. And he comes in and he's giving Nick the riot act. And I knew right there, I said, no, this kid, I can't be involved with this kid.
Yeah. And was that the end of it there?
Nope, that wasn't the end of it. What happened was the judge called for the sheriffs. The sheriffs came and they handcuffed Nick. And the sheriff said, you're going to be sent away. At the time, I didn't know where. Either did Nick, and the judge wouldn't tell him and said, Nick, you got a lot of issues going on in your life. We're trying to help you. And the judge was very, very good to him. But at the same time, I don't know if you remember Judge Jeremiah. He was a great judge, and he's the chief judge, and he was a fair judge and a straight shooter. You knew where you stood for my dealings with him before you left the room. But he told Nick straight out, Nick, you got to get some help. So he said he was crying that they were going to abuse him or hurt him, or the sheriffs or something. So I asked the judge, can I ride over with him? And they said, sure. So we went down to the back of the judge's chambers, down to the Sally Port. They put me in the police van, 2 police officers with Nick. He was on one side of the cage, I was on the other. And we rode over to over to Camp Street area somewhere. There was like a group home there. So they took Nick out, and he was kicking and screaming, and the judge, the police officer was like, listen, the sheriffs, we're only giving you a ride. You know, that's it, you know. So you're gonna go in this building whether you like it or not, pretty much, and deal with whatever you're gonna deal with. And they said, Representative Coogan, you're all set. So I said, all right. I said, Nick, take care. And I felt really, really bad. I was sick to my stomach because, you know, you kind of want to believe what he had to say, but I really didn't know. They took him into the group home. I had not heard from Nick after that for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. He turned 18 at this time, and then he popped back up from Florida. I guess he was down in Florida.
And you said he popped back up, and I know there's probably more than a few years later. At some point, he's kind of back around the State House, kind of ingratiating himself to state representatives again, kind of pushing for DCYF reform, right?
Yes, he was a ball of fire. He come back. He was trying to become a lobbyist. He was testifying. He was trying to hold rallies out in the State House, in front of the State House and the state steps. You know, he could only get like, you know, a handful of people to come up there, but he had to get a hold of a couple of reps, and you know who they are. I don't want to mention their names. That's something you could talk about down the line, but to put in legislation for him and so forth and so on.
And at this point, you weren't at the State House anymore, right?
No, I was not. No.
So from afar now, what did you think that he had kind of resurfaced back at the State House?
I kind of can see with, I never told him, but I understood Jeremiah, Chief Judge Jeremiah, more and more with the 45-minute conversation I had about Nick, and that he was suing the state. At this point, he's trying to sue the state. He made allegations of another state rep sexually assaulted him. He told me he was married and had kids, and his stories always changed. So he was a hot mess.
And at this point, are you not believing what he was telling people, or was it just kind of suspicious, or did you? So was there kind of a feeling to kind of beware of him?
The more that he called me, and the more he was around myself and other reps, and you know, you kind of make friendships up there with other reps, and very rarely do you make friendships with a page. And Nick was one of those people who was like a net, you know. You couldn't get rid of him. He was always popping up. You're trying to, you know, avoid him a little bit, and you know, but at the same time, you know, be respectful. And then he's making his rounds on the Cianci show, and he's trying to, you know, all the different talk shows out there. But mainly he was trying to get on the Cianci show. He was showing up at fundraisers. Even though I was not a rep anymore, I would get invites to certain reps fundraisers, and Nick was there. He was everywhere. You know, the governor's office, the Senate, the House. He was all anywhere there was politicians. Nick was at.
And at some point, from my recollection, you know, just in looking up some of the history, there was a news story, I want to say 6-7 years ago, where did he speak out against you, claim you were stealing signs or something like that?
Yeah. So what had happened was, Nick, you know, I'll jump forward quite a bit, but Nick was in Utah, no, Daytona. No, wait a minute. Hang on. He was in Dayton, Ohio, and he called me up and he said, hey, I'm moving back, you know, so forth and so on. But prior to that, he was married, and I met the young wife, and, you know, he took us to dinner, my wife and I. He paid with the credit card. The bill had to be $1,200. And after he paid, you know, he wouldn't let me pay. We were there for multiple hours, 4 hours. So after we did that, he and his wife had left, and then she had called me a couple weeks later saying that, you know, he's abused her. You know, he has a weird sexual whatever. And she's got to get away from him. She's got a restraining order. So I went on the webpage and I looked it all up, and I saw it was all on there. And then, you know, he didn't know that I had spoke to her. She called me, and that he stole one of her family members' identity and got a credit card, and just a whole bunch of stuff she had told me. So when he had moved back, he came back up, and at the time I was thinking about running for state representative again, and he wanted to run my campaign, and I said, no, Nick. But he kind of forced and injected himself. And then what had happened was, my mother and father both got ill, and they died actually 3 weeks apart. So I decided not to run. But Nick was irate. He's saying I owed him money. He moved up here, and he was like a crazy man. And then the sign thing that supposedly happened didn't happen, but he was part of that. He was part of fabricating that, and with the other side, and that's what makes him very dangerous. He's not afraid to lie and say anything and be manipulative. And obviously nothing became a sign thing because it never happened, but that was Nick and the other side. So he felt like I betrayed him and turned on him, and he was given another rep who you probably know was a female rep. He extorted her for some money and gave her a hard time. And so I called Nick out on it. I said, gee, Nick, I said, you're harassing other reps, you're extorting people, you're asking for money, you're asking me for money. You lied about the sign thing with, Brian, I'm sorry. How can we be friends again? And I said, Nick, we'll always be friends. And I had to keep him, I had to act like I was his friend because he's a very dangerous individual. He put up something on social media. He puts up on social media that he created, and he lied. And so, that was really the beginning of the end of that relationship.
And then at some point, again, now several years later, did you hear that he was sick or dying?
So what had happened again? I'm going to go forward. This is 20 years, 22 years of knowing this animal. He's very dangerous. There's a lot that happened in between with a lot of the reps and a lot of problems that he caused a lot of people. But what happened was, I'll speed it up. So he called. So next thing you know, the state police are looking for him because he's a registered sex offender. He was not registering as a sex offender. He was running around, and they lost track of him. So the state police called me, and they said, hey, we're calling anybody and everybody that had connections with Nick Alahverdian. I said, okay, how can I help? They said, well, we're trying to pull him out of hiding. He's hiding, and he's running around. Supposedly at this time he has sexually assaulted another woman in Pawtucket. Held her up against, pinned her down. Whatever he did. So then they said, can you help us flush him out? I said, well, I have his picture from his arrest for being a registered sex offender. So I said, I'll put it up, so I put it up, and then Nick called me and he said, hey, you got to take that down, take that. I said, I'm not taking it down, Nick. I said, you put something up on social media about me. I did it about you. I said, by the way, the state police are looking for you. He said, no, they're not. My lawyer, Jeffrey Pine, cleared that all up. I said, well, if he did, then he did, but right now they're looking for you. So, and then, he went away. He took down what he put up. He took it down, and I took down his registered sex offender picture, and I told the state police, here's the number he called me from. They still couldn't catch him. So then what happened was, shortly after that, I had the U.S. Marshals reach out to me, and they were looking for him, a team of them. And I think it was about 6 to 8 U.S. Marshals. And they came to my home looking for Nick. And I said, well, it's the state police looking for him. I don't know where he is. I said, I'll give you whatever information I have. And I tried to call Nick, and he wouldn't answer. He finally answered. I said, hey, the U.S. Marshals are now looking for you. I thought you didn't have a warrant, but you said you cleaned it up at the state police. Now the U.S. Marshals are looking for you. No, they're not. I said, Nick, they're looking for you. Here's their contact information. But he always used the Google phone number. Smart kid. Like, he didn't have a regular cell. So you really couldn't track him the way, however he did it. And that was pretty much it. And then again, I'll speed it up. Couple of months later after that, he called me and he said, hey, I'm dying of lymphoma. And he's like, I'm dying. Hey, really acting it up. I said, Nick, you're a liar. I said, I know you. You're not dying. You're acting like you're dying because the authorities are looking for you.
And what was his response to that?
I want to make peace with you. Real con job. You know, he laid it on really, really thick. I want to make peace with you. How can we make this better before I die? You know, I said, Nick, you're a liar. You're not dying. I said, good try. I don't believe you. And 2 weeks later, or 3 or 4 weeks later, he I see the article in the local newspaper. These Browns Post believe that he died, and they printed the Journal. I don't think ever printed it, and I don't think your station or any other stations did an article. I can't really remember, but I noticed it was in a few of the local papers saying that he passed on. And I said to my family, I said, look, here's Nick. I said, he faked his own death. Now he wrote his own obituary.
And you were pretty sure of that?
I was 1000% sure he wrote his own obituary. I knew it was phony. I knew it was fake. I started calling the authorities. At one point, they were calling me and looking for me to try to help get him. Then I started calling. I said, "This kid," and I called some of the news stations and the media outlets and the local papers. Nobody wanted to hear it. No, I was the whistleblower, but nobody wanted to hear it. I was the one telling everybody he's alive, he's phony, he's fake, and nobody believed me.
And now here we are. And what'd you think when this person popped up in Scotland, got arrested there, and they claim that that's him?
Well, before they found him, and I started getting calls again from state police, U.S. Marshals, FBI from Utah. I still have his phone number. And before they found him in Scotland, they called him up and said, "You're right. Is there anything else you can give us?" And I gave them everything they had, and I mean everything. But I said to the FBI agent in Utah, I said, "Excuse me, why, you're the FBI, why can't you catch him?" And he said, "This kid is so good and so dangerous. We try to track him through the internet, whether it's an IP address, however they do it. But he kind of made it, the way I understood it was like he mirrored where he was at. It was a reflection. You thought he was in one state or another country. They couldn't get him. They couldn't get him." He said, "This kid is so good that we can't get him. When we think he's over here and we go check, he's not there." But he was bouncing off. However he does it, I don't really know. But the FBI agent told me, they said, "This kid is good. He's one of the best. We can't catch him."
And then so when I guess he got COVID in Scotland and they got him in the hospital, what'd you think? When you saw the first video and stuff of him, were you like, that's him?
Oh, absolutely. I knew it was him right off the bat. And then the local media, a lot of the local media started calling me. They didn't have his pictures, but throughout the years, what I did is I screenshotted his registered sex offender pictures, his profile that was on Google. I was Googling him in Utah, Dayton, Ohio, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and I got a lot of his pictures. And, you know, someone in the media I started getting, I've gotten several calls from the UK and asking me, how do I know it's him? They set up a meeting with Tom Mooney from the Providence Projo. He helped out a lot. He was on the case. Tom Mooney from Projo went to Scotland to confront them. And everybody says, how do you know it's him or not him? And there's a scar on his right eye, right on the side. It's like a thumbprint. He can't get rid of it. And I gave the people in Scotland and the authorities the pictures over there of Nick's scar on his eye from when he was here in America. And they know it's him over there. There's no denying it. And he wears a necktie and a full suit, but he has tattoos on his arms, which they have pictures, and Nick doesn't know it, but they know it's him. He's trying to, when he was in Scotland and he caught COVID, when he caught COVID, they took pictures of him. So they got a picture of his arms. He's caught. He trying to deny it's him, but you see him in a full piece suit and he won't show his arms because he has a wing on one arm and on the other arm, he has a barcode.
And, he's doing interviews now. He did an interview with me. He's done some interviews over there. This Arthur Knight person, again, repeatedly denying it's him. What do you think of that? And when he speaks, do you hear Nick Alahverdian?
I hear Nick Alahverdian. I see the scar in his eye. I see what he says, why they caught him supposedly in his apartment, which they call a flat over there. In his flat, they got different IDs and stuff because he knows how to make IDs, and he's a shop kid. So they found a couple of different IDs, and they said, well, your name was this and your name was that. Why is your name this now? Well, when I was in, my mother abused me or my father abused me, or whoever abused him, whatever he said. The same thing he said here. What he's saying there, he's saying here. So he changed his name. He's had different names here, but he has different names over there. And because of his family issues and problems over there, he's saying he changed his name. He likes to be all over social media, which he did here, which he's doing there. He likes to be on the talk shows here, which he's doing there. So that's Nick all day long. All he has to do to clear this up is take off his shirt, show his arms, or give his DNA to America, send it over. But he's working the circuits is what he's doing.
And just to wrap up, so you've lived this experience, as you said, for more than 20 years. What do you make of this whole thing now with everything that's going on, and now it's like an international story?
It's Nick did not want to get caught. But Nick is a lawyer by trade, and that's what people forget. He's not a normal American citizen over there. He's actually, in my opinion, Nick is a lawyer by trade, being up the State House, learning the laws, learning the bills. He likes to be in a cocoon in his room and learn off the internet, Google, the computer. He'll read law books. So he may feel safe, like they don't have enough to ship him over. But my opinion is he's gonna disappear again over there. When he has his hearing this month in April, and then they're gonna have a second hearing. My prediction is he's gonna disappear between the first and second hearing, because that's what Nick does. He runs, and he's dangerous. And the poor woman he's with now, he has her brainwashed. I wouldn't doubt at the end when he does either take off or leave her after he steals her. There was a lady in Canada. He just got $40,000 or $50,000 because he had online that he's a producer, and a lady in Canada gave him $40,000 or $50,000, and he just burnt it. He didn't do anything for her. So Nick knows how to troll the internet. He knows how to disappear with the internet. He has a picture with Vice President Pence. Did you see that, Brian?
Yeah.
He knows how to inject himself. He's good. He's dangerous, and he's a sexual predator on top of that. So, it's going to be a lot. If you saw the movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio, and we all rooted for him, he would do the phony checks. Yeah, the problem with Nick is he's stealing people's identity, and he's sexually assaulting women. He's dangerous.
Brian Coogan, thank you very much for your time and trying to encapsulate 20-something years into a few minutes.
Thank you so much.
Apart from telling Coogan and other politicians that he was dying, Alahverdian was also calling journalists with that story too. He was looking for coverage of his own supposed plight, but also pitching a story of accusations. We'll take a closer look at that chapter around the time of Alahverdian's purported illness and how he was incredibly persistent with one reporter. That's up next on NBC 10 True Crime, International Mystery.